Servus, Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. Recently in Switzerland there was a referendum on immigration control. Now these public votes or such a kind of referendum, you can imagine that like Brexit, like there is a concrete question that needs answering and the people are asked in a referendum if they want this or not, if they support the motion or not. And this in Switzerland is very usual. Yeah? In the UK with Brexit, that was a bit an extraordinary thing. But Switzerland has direct democracy, and therefore it is a very usual thing there. It is also interesting, this case, not just because immigration is a hot topic for a long time in Switzerland already, um, but also because a similar referendum with the same intention has been held in 2014 already, and it was a very narrow decision. It was 53 to 50.3, I think, to 49 point something. It was very narrow, but it was accepted. And in 2016, following this successful referendum in favor of immigration control, a law was also passed in Switzerland as a consequence of that. This is how it should be. However, this law, it was about whether or not people should be interviewed, if I understood this correctly, before they are given a job. It is about immigrants taking away the jobs of Swiss people, if I understood it correctly. But the referendum back then was also in favor of upper limits for migration, and the law didn't contain that. So because the law that was passed then did not actually follow the idea or the content of the referendum in 2014. That is also a way to ignore the will of the people. The Swiss People's Party, SVP, Schweizer Volkspartei, they are the more right-leaning party in Switzerland. They had now a new referendum started, and it was not about ending migration but controlling it. And so the important points are that Switzerland maintains control of their migration. That means the EU cannot tell them how many people and what people they let into their country, and it should be, of course, regulated and limited also. And to make it short, not to make it, I think I haven't even said that yet, this referendum now, the second one in 2020, it failed. So 60% of the people in Switzerland who were eligible to vote, or who did vote actually, I think the turnout was around 50%, as is customary, I think, for these kinds of things in Switzerland. And 60% of the votes were against that suggested initiative for migration control. And it has a lot to do with the EU actually. So there is a agreement between Switzerland and the European Union where EU citizens can freely look for jobs in Switzerland, and they can also then migrate there. So that means there are a lot of EU citizens living and working in Switzerland, and there are also so-called Grenzgänger. That means people who live in Germany but near the border, and they work in Switzerland. They commute there for work, and they also take away, so to speak, Swiss jobs in Switzerland. And I think it's already a quarter of the Swiss population that is not Swiss, so foreigners. But of course, they also have the usual suspects, like we have these irregular travelers, let's say. But a lot of people, a lot of foreigners in Switzerland, you must know, are very highly qualified German medical doctors, for example, German university professors, and also a lot of people who work in the service industry and in the tourism industry, like a lot of people in gastronomy, for example, or in hotels, hotel staff, room service, all that stuff, waiters in restaurants, they are also coming from abroad in many cases. So that means the industry and the economy in Switzerland, they are very, very much in favor of this, yeah, that immigration can stay the way it is, basically. That the French people, the Italian people, the Polish people, the German people, they can still go there, and because the wages are very high in Switzerland, so they want to come there, and they are doing jobs that the Swiss, yeah, maybe don't want to do, or not in that number, like for example in gastronomy jobs, I think. But also, and this is the curious case about Switzerland, the very, very, as I said already, yeah, like university professors, medical doctors, that stuff, engineers, yeah, these are, this is an area where immigrants, mass immigration, you know, is in direct, these people are then in direct competition with the yeah, indigenous engineers, professors, doctors, whatsoever. So this is something we don't really have in Germany, for example. Our immigration is not highly qualified. They don't have a lot of skills. I mean, the overwhelming majority of these immigrants, at least, and they are doing yeah, menial jobs with a very low level of education that is required for that. So they work construction maybe, or yes, I mean, yeah, they can also be waiters in restaurants, of course. Yeah, they can work in, they can have their little stores and something. But in Switzerland, you really have a lot of professors, a lot of engineers, and so on. And that is a unique situation. So, or it's different from Germany at least, and different from many first world countries. So, and now I want to comment on this result. So it's very clear result, 60% are against it, and it has something to do, as I said already, as I announced, with the European Union, because the European Union now said this is kind of a bundle, yeah, this deal. It is an umbrella contract, more or less. If you don't accept our migrants, so to speak, then you can also be punished in terms of accessibility to the European market, to the EU market. And Switzerland is not only a country of banking and of tourism, they have a lot of industry. They have machinery, pharmaceuticals, and so on, and they of course export a lot to the European Union. And this is where the European Union can now almost blackmail the Swiss economy, I would say. They say if you don't stay open to EU citizens, you can no longer, or not to those conditions that you have now, export to our markets. There might be some tariffs or something. You can, of course, there is not an embargo or sanctions or something, but maybe the tariffs get higher or something. So this is something that the EU threatened with, and yeah, I think this is also why a lot of people from Switzerland voted against changing their migration policy. So that means Switzerland is not, or cannot really yeah, govern themselves in that respect. They do not have the power to set their own migration agenda. The EU is, of course, heavily influencing that, and that is how it will be. So the Switzerland stays open. And one comment on that is now from my side that you see that direct democracy, you know, is not a yeah, it's good, I think. I think it's not a bad thing, but it doesn't solve all these problems that especially people on the right are seeing. Many people say, and the AfD is very much goes into this direction. They say, we want in Germany, we want direct democracy like in Switzerland, the Swiss model of direct democracy. Yeah. Okay, but if you're blackmailed by other states, if the people are under that impression, maybe that is brought to them by the media, by the mass media, and by big parties, that this is in their own best interest and one shouldn't change that, we have to be an open country whatsoever, then direct democracy also doesn't really help. I mean, I'm not saying direct democracy is a bad thing, but I'm saying people should not put their hopes into that too much, that they think, oh, all our problems are because of the political parties and because of the way that we elect people or representatives in our parliamentary representative democracy. This is the root of all evil or something like that. In Switzerland, you see now, they voted once and it was successful. Then the politicians made a law that was not really in the spirit of that referendum, and then they hold another referendum and then it fails. Yeah, because with some outside pressure, some scaremongering probably, oh, our Swiss economy, our jobs in the export industry, they will all go away if we don't do what the EU wants. Yeah? And there you go. Then, or maybe a lot of people already got Swiss citizenship that are lefties from Germany or something. I don't know. So of course, between 2014, the last referendum, and 2020 now, um, uh, there were many foreigners that entered Switzerland, and I don't know if some of them might not have gotten citizenship and the right to vote. That is also a factor that should be considered. I don't know how easy it is to get Swiss citizenship when you live and work there for 10 years already and have this Swiss-German language certificate maybe. Yes, even Germans in the German-speaking part of Switzerland, they are considered, of course, as people who speak a foreign language because it's not a dialect, Schweizerdeutsch, yeah, this is not a funny dialect of German, even though it might sound like that to some people. It is actually its own language, and even Germans are expected to do a language course there, I have heard. My Swiss friends told me. So there you go. So to sum up, referendum part 2 failed. Switzerland will not take control of its immigration policy. They are not a sovereign state in that sense. They are not in the European Union, but they still are subject to all these decisions made in Brussels, not even indirectly, it's pretty directly actually, and they can't do anything about it. So maybe that is some food for thought. That means direct democracy doesn't solve all problems. It is not the EU that is the big boogeyman here. There are powers at work here that are more general and bigger than just the European Union and just our parliamentary system with corrupt political parties and these old elites. These are all parts of the problem. But I think it is much bigger than that. You cannot just point to one thing in procedure or in um, uh, um, institutions or something like that and say this is the problem. If we get rid of this thing, then it will be different, and then European people can once again be European people in Europe, and the future for our children, so to speak, will be more secure. This is not how the game is played. There are interests at play here that, or interests are involved here that are bigger than just the EU and just the political parties. As I said, in many cases, it's our own industry. Yeah? They want, of course, cheap labor. They want more competition on the job market, and that means then that they, their cost for hiring staff goes down, and they have more customers, yada yada. So it is a complicated. I think it is a web of different interests, and it is not one reason or one problem, but all these things at once. They create the situation in that Europeans have to deal with at the moment, which is, of course, a lot of immigration, a lot of pressure on the job market, on wages, and also, of course, you see that we are overcrowded, we are overpopulated. And this was exactly one of the arguments, I think, that they put forth in this Swiss election, I said, I mean, you can just look it up on Wikipedia or somewhere. The population of Switzerland has been increased so much by foreigners that went there to work. And as I said, these are not uneducated poor people. These in many cases are very highly educated people, but nevertheless, they have to live somewhere. They want to see a doctor. They use roads. They have cars. They use trains. They use electricity. They use resources. We are in many places in Europe right now, maybe not in Brandenburg or Sachsen-Anhalt, yeah, but in many areas, in many cities, we are reaching capacity limits here that really decrease the quality of life there. Yeah? Maybe you want to see a doctor, but you can't. So that means you pay a lot for your health insurance, but you never get to see a doctor. And that makes you feel very frustrated. And this is part of the reality that we have. And I never lived in Switzerland, but I could imagine that the Swiss People's Parties, they didn't take this out of thin air. They didn't just make that point up. I think in many areas there is actually gentrification. Let's call it this way. This is how the lefties would call it. Yeah, when their hip part of town that was cheap before is then taken over by the hipsters, and real estate prices go up, and they can't afford the rent anymore in their old, cool leftist part of town. Gentrification. In Switzerland, I would say we have gentrification on a national level almost. Yeah, I think the whole country of Switzerland becomes gentrified by, in many cases, German professors, engineers, and doctors. Yeah, it's probably really a lot of Swiss people don't like Germans very much exactly for that reason. And the other reason is maybe because Germans expect Swiss people to speak German, and then they are perplexed that they don't understand so well, or that they don't understand the answer then. Yeah, that German arrogance might be another one of those points, but it is also that they take away the jobs, that they have the high earning jobs then in many cases, and that they just um, probably make living in that city harder and harder for the indigenous population, for the Swiss people, because they drive up the prices like there is no tomorrow. I mean, just look up the numbers. I think it was 25% of the population is not Swiss, and that increased tremendously in the last decade. So I think people feel that. People feel this population pressure and all this yeah, all this money that is flooding the country and driving up the prices everywhere. I think ordinary Swiss people are fed up with that. But as I said, well, 60% of Swiss people are, or of the voters there, are the people who cast their vote here, they are still in favor of this migration policy. And yeah, it's not just the German professor or engineer that enters the country. It is not just the seasonal worker in the tourism industry. It is also, of course, the people that Germans let into the country. I mean, who says that some irregular traveler just stays for a year in Germany and then decides that he wants to be in Switzerland now, and boom, he's in Switzerland? I see no reason why this shouldn't work. And maybe that is also some point that Switzerland should bear in mind, that they're not just getting Germans when they get people from Germany, they also get non-Germans. They get people from all over the world, actually, when they are leaving their border with Germany uncontrolled, basically, yeah, unregulated. And there are no upper limits, there are no strict conditions, and that is what they get then. If your border to Germany is open, you get everything that gets into Germany. I think it's very clear. I think I don't need to elaborate further. Okay, I want to leave it at that. That is my take on this referendum in Switzerland. Let me know what you have to say about that, and if that maybe changed your opinion about the efficacy or something of direct democracy. Of course, direct democracy is not a bad thing. I would still support it, but maybe people should manage their expectations when talking about that. It is not the be-all, end-all solution to all our problems here. That is a boomer way of thinking, I guess. It goes much deeper than that. I hope you check me out next time again. And towards the end, I want to say, thank you to all my supporters, to my subscribers, to my viewers, or listeners I should rather say. Even though there are some pretty pictures, I wanted to show you the pond also in nice weather. And this Sagi, this Raya here is yeah, very tame. I'm standing like 5 meters away from it and it doesn't really fly away. So nice. I hope you like these pictures too. And yeah, if you like this presentation, please like, share and subscribe, and also activate the bell icon, because not many people who are subscribed to me do. Please do that. And yeah, if you want to support me, you can do so directly via PayPal or via Patreon or Subscribestar. Thank you guys very much and see you next time. Servus, Kameraden.